Okay, finally. Alright. Dang. Okay, you all are stars because we're now 65 minutes late starting class. For those of you at home who are not aware of the comedy of errors that we've had today, we were just about to start class and water started pouring through the ceiling in the classroom, so we shifted to a new classroom which then decided not to allow us to launch Collaborate. So I do apologise for the lateness of class. Okay, so I will try to speed up a little bit so we can get out a little bit quickly, but I don't want to go so fast that you're not following what I'm saying, all right? So I'm very familiar with this information, so if I'm going too quick, stop me, all right? Make me redo it. I am attempting to video it as well, and I will load that video to YouTube because sometimes the Collaborate sounds scratchy or the video doesn't look too good, and so they're hopefully, if I do it right, there'll be a YouTube backup today. Okay. The plan is to run through the syllabus. Hopefully everybody looked at the syllabus already so we can get through that quickly. We're going to look at some APA. APA is one of the textbooks that you were required to have, and you'll keep that APA manual throughout your whole graduate school career because that's the Bible, right? Better than the Bible because you might get a graduate degree if you read it, right? So, and we're going to talk about purpose statements. The goal of this class, long term, right, is that you are able to find good research and that you're able to use APA formatting and that you understand what a research question, what a purpose question would look like and how to find literature to support that research, so that if you wanted to run your own research, so if you want to go on the thesis route because you're thinking you might want to go do a PhD, then, or you don't want to do the capstone class and you'd rather have a thesis piece of work and work independently, then this will show you how you will go about setting that up. Okay? So that's the long-term aim when we're looking at what's involved in the class. Okay? Is that all right? Was everybody able to access everything that I had up on Blackboard? It didn't, because sometimes I do it wrong, right? Sometimes I will tell you there's something there, and then when you go, it isn't because I forgot to open it. Like it's there when I look at it, but I forget sometimes to open it for students. So let me know if at any time I say something's there and it isn't there, okay? All right, very quickly, you're all capable of reading the syllabus. Please remember that you have to do the participation agreement. I'm required to report on that next Tuesday morning before our next class. If you have not completed the participation agreement and you are not in the classroom and you do not hand in your homework, I will have to say you are not attending and you will not get your financial aid. You three are okay because you're already here, right? But for the others, I still need you to do the participation agreement because that's your signature that you've read the syllabus. All right? Required textbooks, so we've got a little research methods book, and there is a more detailed PE research methods book, but this one is easier to read. The other one is very theoretical, very technical, and this one is really easy to read. It's very chatty, very user-friendly. All right, so that's why I use this one. Doesn't mean that you might not sometimes want to go and access some of the more technical ones in the library, okay? Your APA manual, unfortunately we're still on the 6th edition. I had my fingers and toes crossed that they would bring out a 7th edition because I don't like the 6th edition. I did my graduate work on the 5th edition and it was much nicer to work with, but they didn't, so we're stuck with the 6th, okay? Additional readings, there's tons of stuff up on Blackboard for you. So you'll find a folder for each week, and each week has things that you have to read for class next week, all right? And I'll show you that in a minute. Course requirements, you can read that. The thing I want to highlight, particularly for the distance students, is that you are required to be here the last 2 weeks of school, right? So live via Collaborate or bottom on a seat in the classroom, because you are going to do presentations to each other. So you have to be in the room to present, and when you're not presenting, you are going to be peer evaluating, and that is part of your grade. So if you don't make those last 2 weeks, you are forfeiting points against your grade, all right? So I'm giving you warning now. Those of you who have full-time jobs, you've got all semester to work out getting 2 weeks off at the end of school. So do not tell me on the 2 weeks that you can't be there. If you are really struggling to be available for those 2 weeks, I need to know sooner rather than later. If you tell me at the last minute, I will say, tough doo-doo. All right? So, just fair warning. I'm telling you that's what you need to do. If you have a problem with it, let me know. And we can work around it. But I cannot work around it at the last minute. Okay? Hey! Hurrah! Where's the camera? Hi, Sophie. I hope you can hear me and see me. I can't see you, so you don't have your camera turned on. But I know you're logged in, so well done. Looking at the evaluation, you're going to write some article summaries. I will go over that today because you have a practice one to do this week, and then the graded ones start next week. All right? You've got a couple of media site workshops to watch. You can do that whenever you want to, but there's a due date for them, so if they're not done by that due date, you'll lose the points for those. But when you do them before the due date, is up to you. The link is in Blackboard for you. All right? The purpose statement that I mentioned will be something that you will write and hand in near a midterm. And then after midterm, we do some slightly heavier writing, but it's pretty short, right? I don't make you write, because this is an introduction to research, so you're going to start finding your own articles and writing little summaries. So we're going to practice the summaries now, before midterm, and then after midterm, you're going to go and find your own articles and write annotated bibliographies on those, which is just a form of summary. All right, so I'll explain the formatting and things as we go along. Okay, so far? Makes sense? Okay. I can't hear you, Sophie. So if you're trying to ask a question, and we can't hear you, you can type your question down at the bottom of the chat room. Okay, go through the policies. They're all the typical ones you've all been in undergrad. There's nothing unusual there. Check the due dates. Everything is in the syllabus for you. So when you go to the schedule in the syllabus, you've got which week we're in, what the date is, what class we're doing, what homework is due that week, and what day the homework is due. Right? Everything is due by 11 o'clock on the due date unless I change it. If I change it, I will notify you through Blackboard. So if I forget to load the article you're supposed to be summarizing and you let me know it's not there, I'll add a day to the due date because I screwed up. It happens quite frequently, unfortunately, but just kick me every now and then and I'll put it right, okay? All right, any questions on that syllabus? I don't want to spend time because we're running so late. I don't want to spend time going through it in detail. Please, please, please read it carefully. When you sign the participation agreement, I have a big CYA right here. So if there's something in the syllabus that you do not like or you do not understand, you need to talk to me about it quickly before you sign your participation agreement. Does that make sense? All right, because once you have signed it, you're responsible for what's in here. Okay? That's how it's going to work. So just make sure that you do your part. Read it carefully. If you have a question, check in with me. Either email me or stop by the office. It's a little bit crazy this week, but all right? Okay? All right, so we're going to move on from the syllabus. Were you able to get the little bit of reading done leading up to class? There was a little bit of pre-reading required. Does anybody want me to go into Blackboard before we start the PowerPoint and actually show you where things are in Blackboard? No? Yes. Okay. I'm going on then. All right, if you have trouble finding anything, let me know, okay? Okay, so let's have a look at APA formatting. All right, syllabus, hopefully this thing works. Okay, so check your syllabus. We have the Collaborate Classroom. When class is finished, I will archive the Collaborate Classroom. So when you go into Blackboard, you can always click on the archive and watch the class again. As a backup, I am videoing it, and I will download the video to YouTube, and there'll be a folder at the ENMU HPE in YouTube that says HPE 502 Fall 2016. All right, and there'll be videos, assuming I remember to actually press the record button, there'll be videos there. Right, one of you might want to take responsibility for that because I'm pretty bad. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Okay, so we're doing a research class, and since we're in PE, you might be wondering why we're doing a research class, all right? What research sounds like a scary word. Research is the most fun on the whole planet. I promise. You're going to love research by the end of this semester. It's so much fun, right? You get to ask questions about things you don't understand. So why, if I do this training program, does this happen, but if I do this, something completely different happens, right? There's no reason for research to be scary. It's a lot of fun, right? Because you get to ask any question that is of interest to you, okay? And all it is a word that describes we want to find something out. I want to know why hummingbirds can dive into my feeder and hang there for like 3 minutes and I can't even see their wings move, they're moving so far, right? I want to know why. That's a research question. That's a pretty broad, vague research question, but I can go and look it up, right? So why do I need to lift X percentage of weight to look for endurance versus Y percentage of weight to get strong? Right? That's a research question. Things you ask yourselves all the time when you're training or coaching or working out. Okay? So it shouldn't be something that is unapproachable. Right? It should be very easy for you to think, well, I have questions all the time about what I'm doing, or why did I get hurt? Or why did I not get hurt but someone else did get hurt? Why did we do that exercise for rehab? Okay. There's hundreds of questions. Okay. So we want to read it because reading research, particularly current research, is going to keep you up to date with what is really happening in your world, okay, in the things that interest you. So oftentimes PE students get a bit scared when we talk the science word, right? But everything you do in sport or exercise or PE or lifetime movement is scientific. Everything you do has some scientific basis, something that we can explain through science. Okay? So again, science shouldn't be scary because you do it, moving is science. Okay? So I just want to understand how that happens. That shouldn't be concerning or overwhelming, right? It should be something that excites me because this is something I do very well. You all are expert movers, right? Every one of you in the room, at least, was on a scholarship at a D2 university. You are damn good at what you do. Makes you very special because not very many people move as well as you do. So why do you move so well? Right? So when we read research, it allows us to understand what makes us different, why we're good, why there's something we can't do. But it also keeps us up to date with what is changing. So particularly in exercise physiology right now, the research in exercise physiology is moving at a ridiculous rate. And things change. What we know about how a human moves and what happens when they move is literally changing every year. So if you go out and start coaching or teaching and you don't stay current with that information, then you are not giving your athletes the best opportunity to be successful because someone else knows something you don't that works better. Right? So if you choose to go out and go, well, this is how I do it, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I know, so I don't need research, then at some point you're going to get beaten, which doesn't bother me, but I know it bothers you because you're all very competitive, right? We don't like getting beaten. We don't like losing. I don't mind. You guys don't like losing, right? So why would you disadvantage yourself as a coach or your athletes by not staying current with the research? Okay. So that's why we want to read it. What I want to do is show you how to find it and how to read it sometimes a little bit quicker. Can I glance through an article and pull out the really key points in an article so I don't have to sit there and read the whole 20 pages? Right? You might want to sit there and read the whole 20 pages, but that takes time, and we don't always have time. Okay. So, as a researcher, when I do research and I publish research, then that allows me to share something I learned that other people don't know. Right? So that's quite fun, because I'm the only person that knows. It's just a teeny tiny piece of information, but still, I'm the only one that knows it, because I did the study. So then I get to go out and show it to everybody else. Right? So, and then of course, you're in grad school, so like it or not, you are going to do research and you do have to read it. So if you want a degree, if you don't like research, probably go do something else now, because you've got 2 years of it at minimum coming up. Okay? So, but I promise you, you should, if you approach it with the right mindset, it is a lot of fun. Okay? All right, so when we're talking about research, there are two major categories, and then there are subcategories under there, all right? So the two major, the biggest division is either your research is basic or your research is applied. Now in this case, basic doesn't mean easy. Right? We use the term basic in a different way. Basic means that it wasn't done in the real world. It's typically, not always, but typically laboratory based. It's somewhere where, or it may be a situation where we don't really do an intervention, we don't change anything. We just go and look at something. That sometimes is basic. So we ask a question purely to find the answer to the question. I don't want to apply that knowledge to the real world. I don't want to know what is really happening. I just want, so originally at some point, someone biopsied a muscle and looked at a muscle very, very closely and found out about sliding filament theory, right? How our muscles contract. But they did that in a lab. Right? That's not an applied study, because they pulled the muscle apart and they worked on protein filaments and they worked out how a muscle contracts. Okay? So, applied research frequently takes an idea that has come out of basic research in a lab and looks at what really happens in the real world. So if I am running on a treadmill in a lab with a spirometer and I'm hooked up to a computer and we're looking at what my heart rate is doing and what my oxygen consumption is like. All right? That's a very interesting idea. At what point can I not get enough oxygen in? How far do I go? How high is my heart rate? How long can I last? Right? Well, that's great. But when you're running out on the track, or you're playing soccer, or you're playing basketball or football, is the ground always flat and smooth and moving? Are you running at the same speed, or increasing your speed in a graded manner? Right? What happens when you're out in your game? Is that what happens? You're running on a flat surface? You more so, you not. Depends which surface you're playing on, right? Is the temperature always consistent the whole game? No. Do you have a thing stuck in your mouth and have you got tubes that are hooked up to a computer? Right? No. So, whilst doing the experiment in the lab is very useful because it gives us initial information about you as a person, does it really tell us what happens to you when you play a game? Maybe not. So it would be very nice to be able to run something similar, but while you were actually playing your game. That would be applied, right? I take the piece of information that I learn in the lab, and I do something in the real world, and I see what happens when we do that thing in the real world. Does the same thing happen? Okay? I'm a very applied researcher, because I don't care what happens in a lab, I want to know what happens on my playground. Right? What happens in the lab is irrelevant because I work with 3- and 4-year-olds, and so it doesn't matter what happens in a lab. Right? I want them in the playground. So another division that you'll hear a lot about in research is the research quantitative or qualitative? Okay, and that question is going to be on your article summary this week, so give it your best effort based upon the reading that you've done. But we will talk more detail about the differences between the two next week. All right? And over the next few weeks. All right, so in undergrad you may or may not have heard the word plagiarism. At Eastern it is in the undergrad catalogue, but I don't know how often it gets thrown at you in your undergrad work. It's a huge deal in grad school, all right? So it's very important that you understand what plagiarism is and you do your best to avoid being guilty of it. Okay? So, if you plagiarize any of your work, best case scenario is you'll get an F for that piece of work. Next best case scenario is you get an F for the class. Worst case scenario is it can get you kicked out of grad school if you are consistently shown to plagiarize and you don't change that behavior. The problem with plagiarizing is that you don't always know you're doing it. All right? So it is quite a fine line that you have to walk, and it's important that you really understand it. So if at any time during your coursework you are unsure whether something you have written would count as plagiarism, it's always best to check in with your instructor. All right? Hopefully you'll get the hang of it and you'll know, but if you're unsure, don't take the risk, because it's a big deal. All right? So in your APA manual, there's some quite good information about plagiarizing. Plagiarizing means that you have taken someone else's ideas and projected them as your own. Right? And it is a difficult skill to learn not to do that, all right? Because sometimes you read something so often that even though you close it and you write your own thing, and you are absolutely certain that you're writing your own words, because you read the thing so many times, actually what comes out on the paper is something that is very, very similar to what you read, right? Taking a chunk of information out of a textbook and just shifting a couple of words around does not let you off of plagiarism, okay? You have to word things in your own way, or you have to put them in quote marks, not a good plan, and not in grad school. We don't like too many quotes in grad school, right? And you always have to give credit to the source that you got that piece of information from. Right? That's really important. So I can say the sliding filament theory indicates that the myosin head attaches to the actin and ATP is broken down and the myosin head moves and the actin is drawn across and the sarcomere shortens and thus we have shortening of the muscle, right? Were those particular words written anywhere? No. Can I write that and not put a reference on it? No, because I didn't create that piece of information. I have to reference that piece of information. Right? Have to. So you want to be careful. It is tricky. You've got to be patient with yourselves. It takes practice. Okay? It's better, in my view, check with your other instructors because they may feel differently, but in my view, the way I was trained is it's better to over-reference than under-reference. Because at least if you're over-referencing in your papers, you're giving it all the credit. If you under-reference, you could get caught out. Right? So, any questions? That will make sense. So, check the APA manual, check your graduate catalogue. If when you read those descriptions, you feel that they contradict what I've said or it says something additional that you're not sure about, by all means come back and check in with me. All right, APA. I can promise you, you are going to hate this book. I've been doing this 15 years and I still hate this book. And we have absolutely no choice whatsoever but to use the book. So we're going to do our best to learn as much as we can. Keep the book with you all the time. All right? You can't learn the book. There are certain things that we do over and over and over again, and you'll kind of get the hang of them without checking the book. But my advice would be always check the book, because you would not believe the ridiculous rules that are in this book. Okay? So, when I write 10 minutes in a paper, okay, as an example, do I write 10 minutes? Do I write 10 mins? Do I write 10 mins? Do I write 10 minutes? Etc., etc., etc. Do I want to learn which one of those I'm supposed to? No. I don't want to learn which one of those I have to do because I have a book that tells me I just have to know where to look, right? So you'll see my book has tags and dog ears and because I don't want to have to remember this. I have a horrible memory and I will get it wrong. And when you get it wrong, Dr. Berkey and I, and hopefully Dr. Yoon, are going to go -2 points, -2 points. Right? Because whether we like it or not, we have to use this manual. Most of the literature that is published in our field uses this formatting. It's not the only one. Biology uses a different formatting manual. Maths uses a different formatting manual. But in our field, this is our formatting Bible. Right? And so when you write a paper in grad school, it has to be APA formatted. Okay? So what I'm going to do this week and next week is give you some basic hints about things that we do all the time. But as I say, the best thing to do is use a ruler and go very, very carefully through the example they give you in the manual. The thing I don't like, one of the things I don't like about the 6th edition is that in places the font they have used sometimes makes it, so for example, well, I'll give you the example in a minute, whether there's a space or not. is sometimes difficult to tell in the manual. So on Blackboard, I've given you some online resources where you can go and check whether or not there's a space if the manual doesn't tell you. It's pretty good at remembering to tell you in the description, but sometimes in the example it's difficult to visually identify. Okay, so APA manual has more rules than you can even dream of. All right? Details are very, very, very important. If it says full stop, period, if it says period, single space, capital letter, and you do period, double space, capital letter, you will get a deduction, because that's wrong. Right? So the detail on APA is very important, and that seems nitpicky. It is nitpicky, but it's important for two reasons, I think. My philosophy is that it's important because it's the rule, and we're supposed to follow the rule. But I think it's also important because in graduate school, details count, right? You should not be skimming through class in grad school. If you want to skim through, you might want to reconsider whether or not you should be here. Because this is not undergrad. This is, I chose to come back to school and learn something I'm interested in. So do it properly. Right? You wouldn't skip the details in your weight session. You wouldn't say, oh, coach said do 5 sets of 10, I'll just do 3 sets of 8, it's okay, it doesn't matter. Would you do that? Would you do that? You'd never do that. So don't do it in school, because the details count in grad school. If you want, look at your graduate catalogue, look at the syllabus. If you want an A or a B in grad school, the work has to be above average. Average does not get you a passing grade in grad school. Right? And you have to have a B or an A. So the details are important. So the APA manual is kind of a training tool to make you pay attention to the details, I think. That's how I approach it, because I hate it. I hated it in grad school. I hate it even more now because I don't use it often enough and I can't remember it, right? So none of us like it, but it's what we have to do. So you try to take a different approach to it so it's not quite so onerous, because otherwise it'll drive you crackers. Okay? All right, so today we're going to look at how do we format an APA reference. So this would be, there's a little bit of language confusion because your reference, when we're looking at annotated bibliographies, would be the thing that in an ANNOBIB is called the citation. In APA manual, the citation is the thing that's in the text, and the reference is the thing that goes at the end of the paper that says, this is where I found that information. All right? So if I start getting confusing on those two terms at any point, always stop me and ask me about that. So the rules for APA references are at page 181 to 192. Okay? And then they have a lot of examples for you, because the thing about APA format is it's different depending on where your source came from. Okay? So if you learn how to do the referencing for a journal article, and I'll show you an example of that, that doesn't mean that when you reference a book, it looks the same. So you have to go back to the APA manual and look at what a book reference looks like. What does a blog reference look like? what does an online newspaper reference look like? Because they can come up, you would be amazed at how many different types of formats they've managed to come up with, all right? So, again, the detail is important. Let me just check myself. Okay, let me give you an example. Cassidy, could you just run to the camera and zoom it in so that on the film they can see what I'm writing here? Thank you, ma'am. All right, so somewhere here I have the article that you're going to practice on this week. So if I have a research article, and I've read this article and it's got some interesting information and I want to put it in my paper, all right? Then in my reference list, I've got to have that written out to show everybody where they can go to find that information, right? That's the point of a reference list, is if I'm not going to write everything that's in that paper in my paper, so I'm going to tell someone where they can go and read that information if they want to. Okay? So, when we do a reference format in APA, we start with the names of the authors on the paper. And one of the things that is different about APA to some of the other manuals is that you do not change the order of the authors on the paper. So in some manuals you would change and put them in alphabetical order, right? But not in APA. And the reason for that, and that may change in the 7th edition, because I've heard rumors that that may change, but I don't know whether it will. The reason for that is that in our disciplines, the first author is identified as the person who did the most amount of work on that piece of research. The second author did the second most amount of work. And the person at the end of the list didn't do very much work on the paper at all. Okay? So, in our discipline, it's important to keep that order because it recognizes something particular. As I say, in other formatting manuals, they just go, oh, stuff that, let's just put everything in alphabetical order because it's easier. Right? But don't make that mistake with us. Okay? So, for example, if I write a paper with a friend, okay, then you start with the surname, okay, you have a comma and one single space, and then the first initial, a single space if there is a second initial, and then a comma. All right? And then if there's only two authors, and if there was only one author, you would stop without the comma. All right? If there's two authors, you would have an ampersand, a space, and then the second author's last name, comma, space, initial, full stop, period. 15 years, I can't get that word right. Okay? So, surname, comma, space, initial, period. If there are second initials, put them in accordingly. Comma, ampersand, second author. Right? If there are more than two authors, the rules might be slightly different, depending on how many authors there are. if there are 3, 4, 5, 6 authors, we need to check the manual, I can't remember if it's 6 or 7 on the reference, you would do exactly the same thing, and the ampersand goes right before the last author. Right? If there are more than 7, I think it's 7, check your manual, you would do, instead of having the ampersand at the end of your list, you have 3 periods, and then you put the very last author in there. So let me tell you which page that is on so that you can take a look for it. It won't be relevant on the practice article this week because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 authors. So that slight difference won't be relevant for this week's homework. Let me that's citing, don't want citing, want referencing. Okay. Oh, here we go. Journal article more than 7 authors, page 198. So it's more than 7. So anything up to 7, you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, ampersand 7. If it has more than 7, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, ... final author. All right. And if you're having a problem with it, come check with me. Okay. So after the authors' names, we put the year that the article was published. Okay. So after that last period, you have a space. You open a bracket. And we say 2012, close bracket, period. Right? So make sure that you find the right date that the article was published. Then you're going to give us the title of the article. Now, the title of the article is sometimes feels inaccurate because you might be taking, depending which journal it's in, you might be taking something where they capitalize every word. We're not going to capitalize every word, right? In the title, you only capitalize the first word. So we're going to say one space, and preschool second line indents, preschool movement, changes in throwing. I'm not even sure if that makes sense, but there we go. I'm making it up. Full stop. All right. Then we're going to give the journal that it was in. Remember, we're giving kind of directions to the reader how to find this article if they want to read the article for themselves. All right? So after the title of the article, because there could be lots of articles by these two authors, right? So we have to give them the title, and we also have to tell them which journal this particular article was in. Right? So, we have a space. Now, the journal title is always italicized, and you do use capital letters for the main words in the title. Right? So, we would go journal of, don't need a capital for of, exercise, science. Comma. Now, the Journal of Exercise Science might have been published for the past 25 years. Right? So just telling them the journal title doesn't narrow it down enough for them to find this article easily. It could still take a long time to find this article. Okay? So the next piece of information we have to tell them is which volume of the 25 years was this particular article in. Does that make sense? Right? So most journals, not all of them, but most journals number their volumes across 1 year. So 2016 is volume 23, right? Some of the biology journals, for some reason, split their volume numbers across the year, right? So you can't always, you've got to make sure that you check closely which volume number it is. So after the comma, the volume number is going in. So let's say volume 23, it's also italicized, okay? Sometimes you're going to stop there. Sometimes you're also going to put the issue number in. Now, my understanding of the way the APA gurus are going is that it's always better to put the issue number in than not if you're not sure. Because the issue number gives the reader more information on how to find this. So the best mistake to make is to put the issue number when you might not necessarily need it. Personally, as a researcher, I love having the issue number. Because if you give me the volume, I might still have to hunt through, depending on how the database sets it up, I might still have to hunt through 12 issues to find that article. Right? So I would encourage you to err on the side of putting the issue number in, just because that's the good mistake to make. I would also encourage you to make sure that you check with your other faculty on how they feel about that, because sometimes it would count as a mistake. And if they're going to be strict about it, you're going to lose points. Right? Do you want the rule when and why? I'll give it to you very, very briefly. Right? If your journal starts in January, right, with page 1, and February starts with page 63, and March starts with page 150, then technically you are not required to have the issue number there, because we're going to put the page numbers in, ergo you should be able to find the article. When you're looking in the databases, it really depends which database you're in, because some databases go 2016, January, February, March, and don't tell you what page numbers are in that issue. So now I have to look through 12 issues, unless I stumble upon it by accident, before I find the article. It's bleeding annoying, let me tell you, because you waste a lot of time, right? So some databases are much more user-friendly, and they'll have January pages 1 to 62, February pages 63 to 149, March page 150. Well, that's great, right? Does that make sense? So technically, if it's like this, where the page numbers run through the year, you would not need the issue number. Does that make sense? Understand you following? If you don't, just come and ask me, all right? If, however, what happens in this particular journal is January starts with page 1, February starts with page 1, March starts with page 1, and you tell them it's in this volume and it's these page numbers, which we're getting to. Come back. All right, you guys have to yell at me if it's doing this, just cause. All right? In this situation, APA requires you to put the issue number in, because this will be issue 1, this will be issue 2, this will be issue 3, so that your reader can find the article. So that's why I say it's better to put the issue in, because that's a good mistake. Right? Now, but you've got to be careful how you format it. All right? Remember, the volume was italicized. There's no space. You're going to open a bracket and you're going to put the issue number in. Close the bracket, comma. Space, oh, there was a space there, space, page numbers, right? So, page 157 to 168, period.
So we don't need to put like PG or anything?
No,
Okay.
not in APA. All right, I'm going to skip the last 2 slides. Can one of you email me and remind me that we need to do the last 2 slides on this one at the beginning of next week? All right? Because I want to get on with how you do the homework, and so we can get out of here. Because it's late. Questions? We're okay. All right. So, homework. In Blackboard, on the side here, ooh, let's go back so they can see the screen. Because Collaborate won't be looking at this, so let's just move this to here. Can I zoom it in a little bit more? Oh, no, that's going the wrong way. Let's try that. All right, in Blackboard, down the side on the left here, you've got a link. In order to email me, please use the email in Blackboard if you're trying to reach me about anything to do with class. If you are trying to reach me about anything to do with advising, email me through Outlook. Okay? Class notes, classroom assignments. Go down to the Assignments tab, and we have a folder here called Article Summaries, which is the homework you're going to be doing for the first few weeks, and the goal is to help you learn how to pick out key points in an article, all right? Because there are certain words you're looking for, there are things you need to know and things you could skip if it wasn't a really crucial paper for you, all right? So you're going to click on that folder. Let me go up to your view. When you look at this, you're going to have this. Here's your APA help. Click on article summaries. Your media workshops are here. The annotated bibliography, which is after midterm, is there, but don't worry about it right now, because you have to learn what you're doing first. And then I have a template here for you to use for these assignments for the next couple of weeks. All right? So, here's the rules for the template. All right? When you look at the template, it has 19 rows in the template. All right? So it's a table in a Word document. There are 19 rows in the table. You are allowed to type 2 lines in each row, no more. So do not send me in a template that has 8 lines in 1 row and 2 blank rows, because I will give it a 0, because you didn't follow the rules. Right? So try to follow the rules. If you're not sure, contact me. That's what they pay me for, right? To help you and explain things to you. So if I haven't made it really, really clear and you are not sure, check in with me, right? So you may type 2 lines in each row, okay? Which means 19 by 2, you get 38 lines. Now, you're going to look for certain elements in the paper. If you find that under one element you don't think you've got enough rows and you need more room to summarize that element, you can move a row from somewhere else. You cannot add a row. There are only 19 rows. Okay? So I don't mind if you move them around under the elements, but you can't add any more. And the reason for that is there's a word limit. All right? You have a maximum word limit of 300 words because you have to learn to summarize articles. And sometimes the articles you read are going to be 20-odd pages long. Right? You cannot hand me in a summary that is 3 pages long, because that is not a summary. Okay? So learning how to summarize well is a crucial skill in grad school. And it takes practice. Right? It's actually quite difficult to summarize a large paper into 300 words, and after midterm it's going to be 275. And when I submitted my abstract for my conference this summer, it was 150. Right? So the word limit gets tighter and tighter and tighter depending where you go. Right? So, maximum word limit 300. The template looks like this. If you can't open it for any reason, let me know. Alright? So, this week is the practice week. Put your name in, because if you hand it in without your name and I grade it, then I don't know who to assign the grade to. Alright? So, the first couple of rows, you are going to make an attempt at an APA reference that we went through tonight. Right? Use the book. Ask yourself questions like, do I capitalize here or do I not capitalize here? Where do I italicize? Is there a space or is there not a space? Is there a DOI, which I haven't told you about, but there's a rule for, and you'll see it if you look at the examples. Okay? So, it means you have to use your manual. Okay? 1 point. 0 or 1 error, you get 1 point. 2 or 3 errors, you get half a point. 4 or more errors, you get 0 points. Right? If you want me to check it before you submit it as your assignment, I can do that. So you might want to think about that, right? Email it me, bring it by my office, whatever's convenient. Say, can you check this? And I might write back and go, you might want to check this. Right? Might make a difference. So if you want help, if you want me to edit something, if you want it to check it before you hand it in, I can do that. Type of article. So is it basic or applied? Is it, when you look at your APA manual and you look at your textbook, so your APA manual, the reading that you did for today, right, starts with types of articles. What kind of article is it? Right. What is the purpose statement? Now, the paper I've put up for this week is actually one I just found, and I haven't read it. It will be very useful if they actually say, the purpose of this study was to blah, 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 and that's often the case. Sometimes they might not use the word purpose. They might say, the reason for this study was to investigate such and such, or the aim of this study was to explore blah, blah, right? But you are looking for one sentence. So they may, I haven't read it, if they have a primary and a secondary, stick with the primary, right? You want the overriding purpose for this article. Now, this is a time when you're allowed to plagiarize, because you can't change their reason for doing the study. So, when you find that sentence, you are going to copy it exactly into the box. Right? Does that make sense? Then you're going to tell me the research design or method. That is generally one of the hardest boxes to identify. So give it your best go. You're going to look for something that says this was a repeated measures study, or this was a pre-post study, or this was an observational study, or this, right? Again, if you look in your books, they give you some ideas of what a design or a methodology would be, all right? So if they test some athletes and then they do a strengthening program and then they test them again, that would be a pre-post design. All right? Give it your best shot. It only has half a point for a reason, because that is very tricky to get right. Okay? Then you're going to give me a brief description of your participants. You're looking for things like, how many of them were there? Were they male or female? If that's important, go back to your purpose statement. If they said preschool movement changes in throwing as a title, and the purpose was to look at preschoolers and how their throwing movement changes when, then we're not looking at boys versus girls. You only have 300 words. So unless boys versus girls is very important, don't waste words telling me how many girls and how many boys. Tell me how many people were in the study. Okay? What age were they? Because age can make a big difference on results. Okay? Maybe, what race were they? depends on what the purpose is and what they're looking at, right? Would race play an issue in the results? If it does, I need to put it in my participant description. If it's irrelevant whether they were green with yellow spots or purple with pink stripes, it doesn't have to be in the description, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Where do they live? Is it relevant to what they're trying to look at? So, descriptions. You can't copy this, right? This is not a copy and paste from the article. This is I read the article, I work out what are the key characteristics of the participants, and I put a description in here. Right? Same for the procedures. The cookbook, what did they do? Step 1, step 2, step 3, what did they do? How did they find, were they volunteers? How did they find them? What questionnaire did they give them? Or what fitness test did they run on them? Right? How many times did they run it? What data did they collect? Goes in here. Oops. The next bit is the data analysis. This is not the software that they use to run the data in, right? This is which test did they use to check the data. So, again, you don't have much statistical backgrounds yet, right? So, you are looking for words like ANOVA, or t-test, or regression model, or right, what was the statistical test they used on the data that they collected? Right? Again, it's only half a point for a reason, because without having taken some stats classes, that can be tricky to identify, because the words are new to you, right? This is a whole learning curve. This is like if I put you on a trampoline and say, okay, do a double back somersault, go. What's going to happen? Probably crash. Probably crash. That's why we have a practice. Okay? It's okay. This is a skill, just like anything you do when you're playing. Right? You've got to learn how to do it. And that takes time. Results. Again, not very many points, because the language is tricky if you haven't read a lot of research. What do you think the main results that relate to your purpose statement were from that test? All right? And then the conclusion. Okay? This is another cut and paste box. We like the cut and paste boxes. All right? There's only 2 of them on the template, but they're very useful. Okay? Not your conclusion, the author's conclusion. Right? Out of all the myriad of results and the great big long discussion about those results, what is the take-home message they make about what they found? So, if we're lucky when we read the paper, it will say, we conclude that. And we can copy and paste that sentence, one sentence, right? Or they might say, the findings clearly indicate that, or we show that, right? So I'm looking for one definitive sentence that highlights what they think they did. Cut and paste. For the purpose statement, cut and paste at the moment for the conclusion. All right? Because, again, you can't change what they think they found, and if you try to reword it at this point, you might get it wrong, and then that's not fair to the authors. Questions? All right, the paper should be up. Please let me know if it's not there. I think it's there. It is titled On-Field Management and Return to Play in Sports-Related Concussion in Children. Alright, so hopefully it's relatively interesting to you all, because the worst thing in the world is having to summarise an article you do not give a toss about. Okay? It's horrible when that happens. So I try very hard to pick things that are hopefully interesting to at least most of you in the class. Alright? Template is there, rules are there, give it a shot. If you want some feedback on your APA before you hand the final one in, by all means send me that. I've talked way too long. You guys are supposed to throw things at me, tell me to shut up or something. Dr. Wall, we're hungry. All right, so again, I'm really sorry for all the hiccups earlier on. Give it a go. It is a practice. There isn't a grade, but next week's does have a grade.
Are you still gonna grade it though?
Yes, I will grade it. I will give you feedback on it so that you can use that information for next week. So if you don't hand a practice one in next week, you're going in blind. That's never a good plan. Try not to do that. Make sure you hand it in by 11 on Thursday. If you are sending it, actually everybody send it via Blackboard, all right? I do not have it set up as an assignment. Typically what I expect is for you to send me an email with an attachment. Blackboard only allows you to attach one document. That can be a pain in the neck, so we'll see how it goes. But you only need to send me one thing at this point, so. All right? We lost everybody, I think, online. I talked too long. Oh, no, not everything. All right, vote. Tell me whether you want to start at 5 o'clock. Doesn't matter. Does it matter for you?
Not now. I think on Tuesdays we would practice from like 1:45 to 3.
Does it matter for you?
That would be nice.
5 would be better. Okay.
And then would it just go next?
What I'll do is I'll send out an email and ask for general opinions, and we'll go with the biggest number. Typically, I don't. Like if we start 4:30, we're usually done before 6:30. Oftentimes we're done at 6 if we start at 4:30. So, and we have quite a few weeks later in the semester where you don't have to come to class. So, all right, let me stop.